All right. Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day to everyone who is out there watching right now in real time or later on for the replay.
Yeah. Was it last time that we had the fireplace?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. This weekend's a little different. We went from freezing temperatures to quite warm temperatures. So
Yeah,
that's nature for you.
that's nature. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, I'm excited about our topic. I feel like it's a good one and very relevant for what's going on and, equipping us to power on. So what do we have?
So we're talking about interrupting the worry cycle, which is a lesson that we put out earlier this week. And specifically in this live stream, we're talking about how to free up our mind from worries and to reduce anxiety. Because like you said, it's pretty common for anyone we might talk to these days to experience maybe more than usual anxiety, given just the uncertainty of the times and what's going on and just being kind of cooped up, right?
And I would say that the reality is, even before this was a real issue.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
And it always has been, but I think forget COVID. I think more broadly about how technology has sort of come into our lives in such an invasive way.
Totally.
Right? And we're constantly getting notifications, and
we're distracted,
bombarded with information.
Yeah.
This was happening well before any
global pandemic.
Yeah, global pandemic.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, I think, weighs on your mind.
Totally.
And can really impact that sense of anxiety. And what your video, I think, did a good job getting at is that anxiety can have a very deleterious effect on your ability to get stuff done.
That's right. Yeah, it can definitely impede our productivity. But if we think about it in terms of, which is something that we discuss a lot on our channel, and building the resilient mindset. But on a related note, right, in terms of social skills, right, because we talk a lot about social skills. If you're in a dark place, if you're in a place where you're ruminating and, you're going through the worry cycle time and time again, think about what that's going to do to the relationships that you've been cultivating, to the people that are close to you, to the people that, you might not be close to yet, but you're, starting to build friendships with them, right? This is also really important to keep in mind in the context of our connectivity with other human beings. Because if someone's not in a good place mentally, right, for prolonged periods of time, that's going to negatively impact the relationships they have, the people that they, spend time with.
That's a very good point, right? I think when people are feeling stressed and overwhelmed and anxious, there is a propensity to withdraw into oneself, right? And you treat other interactions as potentially additional stressors for you.
Right.
And so your goal becomes, simplify everything as much as possible, recede into, your own world.
Your recluse world.
And see if you can come to terms with the situation.
Yeah.
Which is understandable, but the reality is it's those relationships that you might be receding from that are poised to help
get you out of that abyss. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So we're not talking about, every now and then having like a kind of negative thought pop in that you're immediately able to obliterate. This is more of like the cycle of worry where we're, which we've all experienced, where we're constantly in that, cycle. And it's hard to get out, and it's also affecting different parts of our lives. Not to mention the physical stress it has on our mental and physical well-being, right? One thing that I'm a visual person, and so that's one of my sensory preferences. And so for me, like what helps me think about the impact of worry on my body and on my psyche is I imagine it to be like invading almost, right? It's like this invasive, I don't know, like you could think of like a movie you like. We're watching Battlestar Galactica right now. And you
awesome
can
show.
Really good. And you can just like pull from, let's say, different characters and imagine, like the villain creeping up on you, right? And it's like, think about what worry, like you can visualize it as a color even. What is it doing to your body? Like, is it helping you in any way? Probably not, right? Or is it, does it have these deleterious effects on your health? Is it being harmful, right? So if you just visualize what it's doing to you, then I think that could really help if you are also a visual person. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that this type of worry is different from your circumstantial worries because it's like this omnipresent sort of gloom or it's like a cloud that sort of is blocking a bit of your sun.
Totally.
And that can be very hard to deal with because it's chronic.
Yeah.
Right? And the chronic stuff is more easily ignored or suppressed.
That's interesting, yeah.
Right? Because it's around you every day.
So you kind of like say, oh, this is the new normal for me, kind of.
Exactly. And that can be the most destructive because of that, because we're talking about, it may be less acute in terms of the pain that you're experiencing from it. So it's less acute, you don't feel it as strongly. On the other hand, because of its duration, the cumulative effects exceed that of a short acute pain.
Right.
And it has that long duration because you're not necessarily addressing it as
well as you could
expeditiously as you could or should. Now, in terms of what you were suggesting,
visualizing,
visualizing,
what it's doing. I'm not
what
saying,
it's doing.
I'm not saying to visualize. Basically, you want to. What are the ramifications for worrying, right? And so, if you're someone who can kind of imagine the scenario and visualize what it might be doing, it has harmful negative consequences, right? Not just on our well-being, but also on our mental health, but also on our physicality, right? Worrying is proven to lower the immune system. It lowers our defenses.
Changes your gut bacteria.
Yeah. So with that mind-gut connection, this is something that we have to be cognizant of. But it's easy to just say, oh yeah, they're related. That's why in my personal experience, really kind of like focusing on what that worry looks like and what it might be doing to, because we can't see the insides of our bodies, right? We can just...
Or our minds for that matter.
Yeah, we see the outside, right? The external, but there's so much that goes on in the internal that we're not even aware of, right? And this is not about like instant gratification, quick fixes. This takes time.
Or maybe we're aware of, but we have trouble visualizing it.
Yeah.
And that's why I actually think your suggestion is a good one, which is to give the worry some kind of form.
Yeah.
Right? We often anthropomorphize animals.
The sun, the moon.
Right, the sun, the moon, to give them some kind of relevance to our lives and make them more relatable. And so that we could ultimately use them as a structural device to learn from or to act on. I think the same can be done with your worry, right? By giving it some kind of concrete form in your mind.
Yeah.
You can at least you take that first step in recognizing it.
Right.
And by being aware of it, as we know with many things, awareness is the first step to resolution.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, or to change. Yeah.
And so by, again, giving it that form, I think you establish the awareness of it.
Right.
And that's the first step to understanding, okay, now I know this is here. What's it doing?
Yeah.
And what can I do about it?
Right.
Those are those next steps that you take.
To take action.
Yeah.
Right. Not to let not these like passive thoughts or, these thoughts of being defenseless and that your mind will just take over. No, it's like you actually can be proactive and take the steps and ignore that negativity in your head. Do we have something over there? Sorry, were you about to?
Yeah. What I was going to say is that one of the things we don't talk much about, or we haven't yet at least, is how do you identify that there's something there? We say, oh, it's hard to notice, right? Because it's omnipresent.
That's a really good point.
What can we do? What diagnostics can we run on ourselves? What kind of audit can we run on ourselves to identify when there is something like that present?
I love that you brought that up. I think that's so important because it's like, how do we even know that there's something that we need to fix or change or address? I think in the context of worry, I think if you notice a change from maybe what you, okay, let's say recently, right? There have been a lot of moments where people have reported, and I definitely have experienced that earlier on, like when this was still surfacing, where I would read an article, like a paragraph again and again and again because I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate, even though I was not doing anything else. I wasn't multitasking at the time. I was just reading my article or my book or whatever. But there was so much distraction, so much noise in the back of my head. So I noticed that there was something wrong. Like I wasn't aware of it at the time that it was related to like COVID and everything, all that stuff. But I noticed the change. I was like really taken aback by my inability to finish a paragraph.
Right.
Because of that lack of like concentration. So I think it's like these small changes, these little.
So for you, that was
it was an indicator.
Some kind of resistance to focus, some kind of barrier to focus.
Yeah. Or like even like generally speaking, like lethargy. If you're feeling like you don't want to do your workout, if you're feeling like you don't want to talk to somebody you love to confide in or talk to.
That's a surefire telltale for me. Because I typically have a lot of energy. And so when I feel lethargic, I know instantly something is off.
And not because of a glucose spike, but because
No. I run a very low glycemic index diet, so I know it's not a glucose spike. But yeah, that's a really good telltale sign.
Yeah. It's these little things, right?
Right. Yeah. And one of the audience members just brought up a really good point, and I think this can be very effective.
Oh yeah?
Is journaling as a tool for this,
good.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, journaling itself has a wide range of salubrious effects.
Yeah, very therapeutic.
Right? It is an exercise in reflecting on your day. It's a means of unloading some of the burden of the day, some of the stresses that you're feeling.
Yeah.
It's an outlet for you to express yourself.
Yeah.
But it's also an effective way to audit yourself, right? If you're in the business of writing down what you've done that day, including what you've accomplished, you can go back and look at periods where you're more productive versus periods where you're less.
And the environment that you created in order to be that way.
So in the context of auditing, is something off?
Yeah.
You can take a look at your last few days or weeks of journaling.
Yeah.
Are these, what's the content of the journaling? Is it more surrounded by sort of uncertainty and frustrations and fears? Or is it, bright and positive and action-oriented, right? So by using the sort of your previous entries in your journal, you can use that as a tool for assessing what is your mind space in.
I love that.
Right?
That's such a good.
So journaling is a terrific device for a variety of reasons. It's kind of like exercise, right?
Yeah.
Exercise cures a bunch of different stuff.
And more so for
your
similar. Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but even there's a great TED Talk about the benefits of exercise on the brain. Mm-hmm. And when you watch that, you realize how much of a benefit you can reap from exercise for your brain to stave off, things like Alzheimer's and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, so you're very good about journaling and you keep a journal. I'm terrible at it. I don't keep a journal. But at the same time, I do write.
Yeah.
And I find the act of writing, whether or not you journal, and there may be people like me who just, for some reason, I'm just intrinsically resistant to journaling. There's no rationale for it. I just, I don't do it.
Well, can I just interject for a second? Maybe because you have more of a propensity for typing stuff, maybe you can journal typing
I've tried to keep
out.
digital journals.
I know you
I have like
I know
3 or 4 different starts of journals, like in different folders.
It's okay. Know thyself. Know thyself. You know?
I have trouble doing it. But I fully recognize the benefits. It's kind of like I've heard the same thing for meditation, right?
Yeah.
A lot of very smart people know the benefits of meditation, just can't get themselves to do it.
Right.
For me, it's kind of similar to journaling, but there are analogous activities.
Right.
Right. And for me, I find
analogous to journaling?
Analogous to journaling.
Okay.
And for me, I find that writing in general, right? Writing content for this channel and writing emails to friends, right? The more involved and engaged I get in what it is I'm doing in that writing, the more therapeutic I find it to be and more meditative I find it to be.
Yeah.
So I think writing even broader, as a category.
Right.
If you're writing about something that's meaningful to you, if you're doing a journal, it's by definition meaningful. But if you're, doing something more or different from journaling, right? Something more oriented toward an audience or toward someone in your social network.
Right.
Right. That can also be therapeutic and a device for sort of relieving some of the tension.
Yeah.
And once again, if we're going into this process of auditing,
if
you do it a lot, you can see how your mood shifts based on the way you're writing, right? When you're sending emails, you have a whole record of how you're responding to people.
Right.
And the reality is at different times and when we're in different mental spaces, we respond differently. We've all been in those situations where we write an email and totally regret what we wrote.
Right.
Whereas if you're in a different headspace, you might have written something very different.
Totally.
So there are all kinds of these little tells within your communication, your written communication, that can help you assess sort of what your headspace is.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that about the email because Abraham Lincoln had a really interesting strategy for not lashing out at someone that he was angry at by composing, I was about to say the email, but Abraham Lincoln didn't have email back then, composing a letter. That's more likely for that time period. He would write a letter, but he would never send it. And this would be, a heated letter where he would be, excoriating, the people who were in his cabinet or whatever. And never send it.
I love it. Yeah, that's great.
That's the Abraham Lincoln strategy for not sending an angry email.
Yeah, you could take that to, if you really wanted to push it, you write the email and you send it and you press undo.
Oh my gosh, yeah, but sometimes, don't do that because if your internet connection is lagging, it will not unsend.
The undo button doesn't always work.
Don't do it.
Yeah. But I like the idea of writing it out as if you were going to send it.
Right. So the reason I brought this up is that if the worry is based on a specific person, where you might be, placing blame or expressing your frustration towards something that they did or whatever the case, you have worry because of this, the agent is known, right? Then you can compose the email, but never send it out. And that way you can also see, sort of like your train of thought in terms of digesting the worry and trying to figure it out.
So you brought up something, and I think this is a challenging one.
Okay.
Because we've been talking a lot about worries within ourselves.
Within ourselves, yeah.
And often about ourselves or things that affect us.
Yeah.
Another type of worry that's a very real worry is worry for other people.
Oh my gosh, it's a huge one.
And that one can sit on your mind too in a similar way.
Yeah.
But it's different in that when you worry about yourself and worry about things happening to you.
You have control, more control.
Yeah, you have more control over how to address it. If you're worried about someone else, I feel like that's a much greater challenge. And
it's a huge one.
One of them is how do you not inundate the person you're worried about with your worries. Right? You don't want to, if you're worried about them, you don't want to increase their level of worry as well. And then also, how do you go about resolving that worry, right? When it's something you have less control over.
Yeah. What do you in the audience think?
I know.
This is the one that I want to hear from you about because I think this one is there's a spectrum of worry, right? And some people are past oriented, some people are future oriented. With the things that could happen, that might happen, what ifs, all of these, those are the future oriented types. The ones about like something that you did in the past that you might be regretting, that's a past-oriented worry,
Right.
where we can't change it. We just constantly like overthink, we ruminate, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think with the one about worrying for other people, that's shifted more so to the future. Those are so hard to. They're almost insurmountable in my view. But I think the best thing, and I really want to hear from the audience about this, but I think what I would answer would be, and this is something that I personally like find very challenging, to kind of, I think that's when you need to remind yourself about the present, about the now, and to do whatever you can, like to focus yourself, to recenter yourself into the present. Like the present is a present, right? Right, okay,
right.
You get it.
Yes.
So kind of, right? So let's
present
say,
is a gift.
Yeah, so let's say I'm worried about someone. I can call them and tell them how much I'm worrying about them, or I can call them and tell them like how much I love them, ask them how they're doing right now in this moment.
Right.
Understanding what they're saying to me, really listening to what they're saying instead of like ignoring what they're saying and just constantly like badgering them about like the future worries. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like that was really helpful to refocus yourself on the present.
Right. I love
It's
this
hard.
idea of orienting yourself around the present. And I think you framed that very nicely in terms of the being worries about the past. And worries about the past are more so like, I would call them regrets, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas the future is this anticipatory sort of fear.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, really what anxiety is rooted around. Because even if you're anxious about, you can be anxious about something that happened in the past.
Right.
But you're really anxious about the consequences that will manifest in your future.
Or
right?
it may be repeating itself.
Or repeating itself. Right. So I think by rooting yourself in the present, you isolate yourself from those other temporal periods.
Yeah.
Right. And that allows you to center yourself and clear your mind from those influences.
Right.
And obviously meditation is very effective for that. The other thing that I think can be useful is when you're feeling worry for someone else.
And this could be a child, a friend,
Right.
a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, I don't know, anybody that you care about.
Exactly. Typically when you care about someone, what you care most about is the ability to interact with them.
Totally.
Right? And so if you're worried about someone, I think one of a great way to address that is to interact with them, but not in the context of the worry.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So simply by having a conversation with them, if they're a friend, call them up, right? Or if they're less in touch, write an email. Just the exchange is enough, I think, to help alleviate some of that worry, right? Because you're engaging with them, and that's sort of the most important part about caring for someone is the ability to,
talk to them,
have them respond to you. It's that interaction. And that achieves also the dual purpose or the dual objective of being in the present, right?
Yeah.
By engaging with someone, by talking with someone, by definition, you have to be there in the present. You could be talking about stuff that's happening in the future, but you are engaging and responding synchronously in the case of a call
Right.
or an in-person conversation. It's happening in that moment, and that grounds you, that centers you in the present, and it also gives you that interaction with that person that you need to help alleviate the worry. And the key is to not bring up the worry, right? If you bring it up in the context of the worry,
then you're going to talk about it.
Yeah, you're going to talk about it and can cloud things. And that's not to say you shouldn't necessarily express your concern from time to time.
Right.
But you don't want
There's a
that to be,
balance.
you don't want that to be the foundation of your conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The key here is simply having that interaction. And that's the important part. And recognizing that the worry is really just a manifestation, a symbol of your care for them, right?
Totally. And I think one way from a communication perspective, because you might be thinking, well, how can I really be present in that conversation. The best thing to do to be present in a conversation and to avoid multitasking or thinking about anything else is to listen to what they say. And if you have an in-person interaction with them, look at their body language, listen to their tone of voice, pick up on the paralinguistic and the nonverbal cues, right? The furrowing of their eyebrows, a smile on their face, the glimmer in their eyes, right? All of these little cues